This is a special political presentation from News 4.
Good evening. It's one of the most closely watched congressional races in the entire nation. Congresswoman Kathy Hochul facing Republican challenger Chris Collins for the 27th District. And tonight, both candidates are in our News 4 studios to debate the issues that matter most to you, your family, and the future of Western New York. News 4's 27th Congressional District debate starts right now.
Good evening to you and welcome to News 4's Decision 2012 debate for the new 27th Congressional District. I'm Jackie Walker and we're joined tonight by Congresswoman Kathy Hochul, the Democrat in this race, and her challenger, Republican Chris Collins. We thank you both for joining us this evening. Now, we've assembled a panel of journalists for this debate that we introduce to you now. Susan Rose from News Radio 930 WBEN, Robert McCarthy, political reporter for the Buffalo News, and News 4's Diana Fairbanks. The candidates will be following a set of rules tonight that they've both agreed to, and here's how things will work. Each candidate will get an opening remark, followed by a series of questions directed toward them individually. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer their question. The opponent will then have 30 seconds to respond. The final question tonight will come from the candidates themselves, each asking a question directly to their opponent. So let's begin now with opening remarks from the candidates. They flipped a coin. Mr. Collins won, and he has opted to go second. So, Congresswoman Hochul, you have 1 minute for your opening remarks.
Well, thank you for hosting this forum and for Chris Collins for joining us again. 1 year ago, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents honored me with their vote and sent me to Washington to be their independent voice. All across this year, I've met people and I've told them I've kept that promise. I have worked hard to do the following: cut taxes on middle-class families and small businesses so they can create jobs, work to end overburdensome regulations on our farmers like the Zittles out in Eden and Hamburg and the Sangers up in Niagara County, protect our seniors and the promises we made with Medicare, but also to make sure that we keep a strong military and leading the effort to keep the Niagara Falls Air Base right here in Western New York. But we also have to make sure we balance the budget the right way. I've lived the American dream. I've been so blessed to have the honor of serving the people in this district, and I will continue to be a fighter, a strong independent voice to make sure everyone I represent in this district and in this country has the same shot at the American dream I did. That's my commitment to you.
Thank you, Ms. Hochul. Chris Collins, your opening remarks now. Again, you have 1 minute.
Well, good evening. I'm Chris Collins, and I'm running for Congress to do my part to help restore the promise of the American dream for our children and our grandchildren. Our country's at a tipping point. My granddaughter Luna, who will turn 1 on Saturday, has $52,000 of debt placed on her already. That's wrong. My son and daughter, Caitlin and Cameron, in college, they're worried if they're going to have a job or not when they graduate. President Obama and Mrs. Hochul believe we can tax and spend our way to prosperity. I know that's not right, and I believe you do as well. We need to grow our way to prosperity. We need more jobs in America with a strong economy. We need less spending in Washington with a balanced budget, energy independence, and we need to repeal Obamacare. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and I'm confident at the end of this debate, I will have earned your vote on November 6th to go to Washington as your member of Congress, fighting to provide a bright future for our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you. Those are opening remarks. Now we're going to begin our questions for the candidates, and we'll begin with Congresswoman Hochul. Again, you'll have 90 seconds to answer this question. Your opponent will then have 30 seconds to respond. Our first question will come from Buffalo News political reporter Bob McCarthy. Bob.
Good evening, Ms. Hochul. Your opponent has devoted much of his campaign advertising to linking you to President Obama, whom the polls show to be unpopular in the 27th. And so we're wondering, are you an Obama supporter?
You know what? This is why people get so fed up with what's going on in Washington. I don't work for President Obama. I work for the people of this district, and that's why they sent me to Washington to be their independent voice. I have broken with the Democratic Party on many issues, and I don't agree with the Republican Party on other issues. I am liberated in this district to be able to do what I think is best. That is why I'm one of the few Democrats in this country to support the balanced budget amendment to get our spending under control. I support the Keystone Pipeline, unlike the president and his administration. I've broken with the party many, many times, so I don't think it really matters like who I may vote for. I think it matters for the people of this district going to vote for their U.S. member of Congress who's got the integrity and the independence to be a fighter for them, and I've already demonstrated that. So I think that's just a diversionary question, and it's not the relevance. The number one issues in this district are jobs and our deficit spending.
Will you vote for him this year?
I've already said I'd vote for him, but I don't think that anyone else expects anything other than that. I mean, what's that got to do with a race that's this important to the people of Western New York who I vote for president?
All right, Ms. Hochul, thank you. Mr. Collins, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, obviously, Mrs. Hochul is being disingenuous with the viewers. She absolutely supports Obama and his agenda. She campaigned for him 4 years ago. She was a delegate. He appointed her husband as U.S. attorney. Her stance on the issues, she is with Obamacare. She supports bigger government. She believes government needs more revenue, where I firmly believe we have too much spending in Washington. Mrs. Hochul is pretending to be someone she's not. She's pretending to be independent. She is in lockstep with Barack Obama. She supports Nancy Pelosi.
All right,
to be the
Mr.
Speaker.
Collins, thank you. Your time is up there. But our second question is for Chris Collins. For that, we go to WBEN's Susan Rose. Susan?
Mr. Collins, politics is a compromise business. There's a big difference between being a businessman, being a county executive, and being a member of Congress. As a CEO, you tell people what to do. Are you prepared, if elected, to be a member of a team rather than a coach? And if elected, will you finally admit that you're a politician?
Susan, I admit right now I am in the political world. Therefore, based on Webster's dictionary, yes, I am a politician. But I've also spent my life in the private sector, creating over 500 jobs, good-paying jobs for the citizens and residents in this area. I have compromised my whole life. That's what life is. Compromising with customers, with vendors, with employees, with unions, with a legislature when I was Erie County executive. You have to compromise, but you always look to vision and core values. My vision for America is that America will reclaim its past glory as the land of opportunity, providing a bright future for our children and grandchildren, and that will guide me as I cast votes and debate. A belief in smaller government, personal accountability, local decision-making, fiscal discipline, and a government that serves taxpayers and respects future generations are the core values that I will use to debate. But absolutely, compromise is what life is all about. I do it with my kids all the time, with my wife, although she always wins. What can I tell you? I've always been a compromising individual when it comes to getting things done. Private sector, that's what I've spent 30 years doing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Hochul, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
That's interesting to hear you view yourself as a compromiser because you've already said if you were elected to Congress, you would never vote with the Democratic Party. I don't understand how, by making that declarative statement right now, that you think that you can go there and get the job done. That's what's wrong with Washington. People are fed up with people saying, I won't work with the other side. I've already reached across the aisle. I've worked with Tom Reed. I've worked with Republicans from across the state to try to get our economy going and work on key issues. So saying it so doesn't make it so, Chris.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hochul. Our next question is for Congresswoman Hochul. It comes from News 4's Diana Fairbanks.
Ms. Hochul, we've asked our viewers, our News 4 viewers, to send us their questions, and I'll be presenting some of those tonight. The first question is about the Affordable Health Care Act. Joan Reichert writes, now that we are seeing the consequences of passing this legislation, do you, Congresswoman Hochul, still support the Affordable Health Care Act, and will you vote yes on any repeal legislation?
I have said from the beginning, this is not a perfect law. It was enacted before I became a member of Congress, but it is the law of the land. And I have reached across the aisle to work with Republicans to fix the parts that are broken. For example, the medical device tax. That would have hurt Wilson Rape Act right here in Western New York. I vote to repeal, but here's what I do. Here's the difference in us. Fix what's broken, keep what's good, because there's a lot of good parts too. We've got young people being able to be covered by their parents' insurance. My neighbors with kids in their 20s, something that Chris Collins doesn't think should happen apparently. Also, people with pre-existing conditions. There are millions of people in this country, in this state, who have pre-existing conditions who would lose their health care coverage. So, and seniors would be paying more for prescription drugs because the health care bill closes the donut hole finally. You can say you want to keep those good parts, but the policy of just saying flat out repeal and go back to tort reform, that's not going to solve the problems of this country. I'm willing to work across the aisle, work with individuals and solve what's wrong. Even small businesses, I talk to them all the time. I say, why don't we reopen this and have the standards be a higher threshold and exempting people under 50 employees. Let's make it higher. So the way you get things done in Washington is compromise. It is listening to both sides, something that I've done all my life through Congress on down to my town board days. So I know how to get the job done. I understand there's a lot of concern, but let's fix what's broken and move on.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hochul. Mr. Collins, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, Mrs. Hochul does support Obamacare. For her to try to pretend today that somehow she's got the magic wand that can fix various things that are wrong, this is not the Affordable Health Care Act. It's the Unaffordable Health Care Act. Small business wants it to go away. It is $500 billion in new taxes. It's taking $716 billion out of Medicare and jeopardizing my 85-year-old mom's Medicare Advantage. It's a huge expansion of Medicaid, which the states and the counties can't afford. I think I'm hearing Mrs. Hochul say somehow she can change all of that. The way to change it is repeal it and go back where we were and add a few things that we do need, like covering 26-year-olds and their parents' policy.
Your time is up on that question there, but political news reporter Bob McCarthy has our next question, and it is for Mr. Collins. Bob?
Good evening to you also, Mr. Collins. After touting your support for Second Amendment rights, as well as your ownership of several guns, how do you explain the National Rifle Association's endorsement of your opponent?
Bob, I'm really glad you brought that up. Mrs. Hochul and I both have an A rating with the NRA. We both have an A rating with SCOPE, but they have a firm policy. If an incumbent has an A rating, they automatically get the endorsement. That is their policy. Agree or disagree, that's their policy. It's that simple. What I will point out, though, I also have an A rating with the Gun Owners of America. Mrs. Hochul didn't even fill out the questionnaire. She has no rating. So I guess it would beg the question, why didn't she fill out the Gun Owners of America questionnaire? I have an A rating with the NRA, an A rating with SCOPE, an A rating with the Gun Owners of America. I've had a carry permit for 25 years. The public knows I'm a strong advocate and defender of Second Amendment rights. And correct, I have 4 pistols, including my dad's 2 from World War II, on my carry permit. So everyone needs to know I'm a strong proponent and advocate for Second Amendment rights.
All right, thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Hochul, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. I think the NRA ought to hear your criticism of their decision-making policy. They've looked at my record in Congress, and this is another example where I've broken with my own party because I am a firm defender of Second Amendment rights, going back to the days when I was a county clerk and I streamlined government and made it better for them. And I took some tough votes, including voting to hold Attorney General Holder in contempt because of Fast and Furious. So you want to look at my record of independence. I think the NRA knows what they did when they selected me as their endorsed candidate.
All right, thank you very much. WBEN's Susan Rose has our next question, and it is for Congresswoman Hochul.
Ms. Hochul, if you are to believe your opponent, you're a Barack Obama Democrat. You're tied to the president's hip. Last year, according to Congressional Quarterly, you voted with Nancy Pelosi 81% of the time. You talk repeatedly about how you disagree with the president. Tell us how you agree with the president and where you agree with him.
Sure, certainly. First of all, in contrary to what Chris Collins said, I was actually a Hillary Clinton delegate last time, so I was not a Barack Obama, but I will work with whoever is in the White House. If Mitt Romney is in the White House in January, I guarantee you can take pictures of me going to visit Mitt Romney, because that's the kind of individual I am. I don't polarize. I don't denigrate someone because of a party label, and that's not what's getting this country forward. I agree with the president on making sure that we keep our promise to our seniors. That's why I don't support the Ryan budget plan, which Chris Collins says does not go far enough. And the biggest cuts in there are to Medicare. So where are you going to cut Medicare even more to make sure that you can cut the deficit? So his argument doesn't stand with the senior citizens. This is one area Well, I believe the Democrats are correct. We stand with our seniors to make sure that they have that guarantee that's been there since 1965, a program that's kept millions of seniors from falling into poverty when they need it. We're not going to voucherize it. We're not going to privatize it. We're not going to turn it back to the insurance companies, which is what got us in trouble in the first place. So that is a crystal clear difference between myself and Chris Collins, because, again, I'm able to look at the idea and say, this is wrong for my district. Came from a Republican side, but other times they're going to be right, and I'll be with them. So, and also that $716 billion. I have said all along I do not support it. I have voted against it when I voted against the Ryan budget, because those same cuts are in the Ryan budget. And if there was an opportunity to vote up or down against those cuts today, I would do it. We should never have come back from Washington to campaign. We should be in Washington doing the job of the people.
Thank you very much. Mr. Collins, now you will have 30 seconds.
Well, from what I'm hearing from Mrs. Hochul, I'd suggest she re-register as a Republican, because she sure talks an awful lot about how she disagrees with Barack Obama on this, that, and the next thing. We'd welcome you into the Republican Party, Mrs. Hochul, if you're ready to join us. The fact is, Obamacare cut $716 billion out of Medicare. The fact is, I've never said I support the Ryan budget. Mrs. Hochul keeps saying something that's just not so. I did say that the Ryan budget didn't go far enough in balancing the budget. We need to balance it in 10 years. 28 years is too far. That's what I said about the Ryan budget.
Your time is up, Mr. Collins. Thank you. News 4's Diana Fairbanks has our next question, and it is for Chris Collins.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
This question is about keeping the population in Western New York strong. Randy Phillips writes in about his two sons who have begrudgingly chose to live elsewhere in our country. So Randy asks, minus the cost of housing, please tell me and thousands like me what specific economic and financial benefit there is for me to stay in Western New York when I retire.
Well, I share that pain. My oldest daughter lives in Virginia. She has a 1,000-acre Black Angus beef ranch. My 3 grandchildren live in Virginia. So I know what it's like when your kids leave to find a job elsewhere. What we're really talking about is New York State being the highest taxed, most regulated, least business-friendly state in the nation. But those are Albany politics. That's not Washington politics. What I can do as a member of Congress is fight for small business, lower taxes to get the economy growing, and that's why I'm supported by all the business organizations around the country, including just yesterday being endorsed by the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, which represents business in Erie and Niagara County. They know Mrs. Hochul is no friend of business. They know my 30 years of creating jobs and where I stand on repealing Obamacare and lowering the marginal tax rate on small business. So they have more money on April 15th to invest in growth. That will get our jobs and our economy going. Mrs. Hochul wants to raise those taxes to 40% on our dairy farmers, our crop farmers, and our small business. That's not what risk-reward is all about. If you take the risk, you should have the money to reinvest. Mrs. Hochul believes we need more money in Washington, and that's why she supports these higher taxes.
Thank you. Ms. Hochul, you now have 30 seconds.
To the answer to the question, which I don't think was answered, we have great assets here in West New York. Our educational institutions are second to none. The biomedical opportunities we have at the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus are incredible. Even over in Batavia, we've got potential for great new jobs coming from agriculture. I believe in this area. I'm not a pessimist, but when you were county executive in charge of this area, you raised taxes, 14,000 people lost their jobs and left this area, so you have some ownership as well, Chris.
All right, thank you both. We want to remind our viewers you are watching News 4's congressional debate for the 27th Congressional District. And we do have time for one more question from our panel. This is going to be the same question for both candidates. It will come from Bob McCarthy, and you will each have 1:15 to respond. Bob?
For both of you, do you agree with the Obama administration's mandate for religiously affiliated institutions to provide birth control to their employees?
Bob, that is something I absolutely don't support. It's all this part of Obamacare, which is why we have to repeal it. There's something in this country we hold near and dear: separation of church and state. Obamacare not only wants to tell the Catholic Church what benefits to provide, they want to tell all small businesses, what benefits to provide. This is America. If you believe in smaller government like I do, if you believe Washington needs to get out of the way and we need to repeal Obamacare, that is a huge difference between myself and my opponent. In her supporting Obamacare, I'm sure she's going to say that's just one other thing she wants to take out of it. It needs to go away. Before I end, I'd just like to say to Mrs. Hochul, I know you're blaming me for the Great Recession, where 14,000 jobs disappeared from Erie County. They disappeared from around the country. But you know what? President Obama's done nothing to get those jobs back. We're stuck with 8% unemployment for 44 straight months, less jobs in September than in August, less jobs in August than July. So blame me if you want for the recession. I don't think the viewers buy that.
All right, Mr. Collins. Ms. Hochul, you now have a minute 15 to respond to Bob McCarthy's question.
Glad to. I'm not sure how we got from contraception to jobs, but certainly I will answer the question directly. When this first proposal came out, I contacted the Secretary of Health and Human Services and I said, we need an accommodation here. We need a religious accommodation to make sure that we're not imposing something against religious beliefs. They answered that because I thought it was inappropriate to demand that religious organizations do something that they are not willing to do and it is against their religious tenets. What has been an accommodation then is to say that you don't have to do it. You need a third-party organization can do it so you can be true to your religious beliefs. But you also have to realize they already did exempt convents and rectories and places where it's simply the religious. What they're talking about are healthcare institutions like the Catholic health system or Catholic colleges like Canisius. And when I heard about this, I contacted the leader of those organizations and said, what's your opinion on this? What's this going to do? That's how I operate. I want to know what the people in the district think. Well, guess what? They've already been following this in New York State for over a decade. So this is not a radical new change for this area. They're already doing it. So, you know, this is just another example. You're trying to demonize people, polarize. And you know what? The answer deals with working with individuals across the aisle and not just being so strident in my way or the highway.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Our final two questions tonight are going to come from the candidates themselves. Mr. Collins, you have a question for Congresswoman Hochul.
Yeah, I guess I'll follow up with the first question Mr. McCarthy asked her. Why is she supporting Obama? We've got $1 trillion deficits each year for the last 4 years. My granddaughter now has $59,000 of debt. We've had 8% unemployment for the last 44 months. We're going to have a huge expansion in Medicaid. As county executive, I know Medicaid takes 100% of our property taxes. The cupboards are bare, and they want to expand it even more. These aren't one or two little things about Obamacare that's got to go.
She needs to answer your question now, and she has 90 seconds to respond. Go ahead, Congresswoman.
I wasn't sure what the question was.
Why are you supporting Obama?
I have said there are areas where I stand with the Democratic Party when it comes to protecting Social Security, not privatizing and ending Medicare as we know it. Those are key differences between us. But I'm not so partisan that I can't be open-minded to ideas that come from another party. That's not what's getting this country moving forward. So who I vote for in the privacy, what's that got to do with this district? It's all about finding what's best from both. Neither party has got a monopoly on all the good ideas. When it comes to taking care of our seniors and tax cuts for the middle class, that's where I'm standing with my party, but I also believe the Republican Party has also got a lot of great ideas, and that's why I support them. So it doesn't matter, Chris, as much as you want to say it. And I'm really glad that your mother's in good health, because if she ever needed Medicaid to help her defray the costs of a nursing home, she'd be in trouble under your policies and the Ryan plans, because they basically emasculate the program, and there's not enough resources for the localities to take care of the most needy. 2/3 of Medicaid dollars go to take care of our seniors in their nursing homes. I'm not prepared to abandon them no matter what.
All right, Congresswoman, now it's time for your question to Mr. Collins.
We all agree that deficits is one of the biggest problems facing this country. $16 trillion unsustainable, which is why I support a balanced budget amendment. My question to you is, in light of this and your concern about your granddaughter, which I think is admirable, how can you sign a pledge to a shadowy organization out of Washington where you said that you will never raise taxes one dime on corporations that ship jobs overseas, big oil companies, you'll never, millionaires and billionaires? You know what? I wish we could give everybody all we want, but we've got to get our spending under. How do you reconcile that position, signing a pledge to Norquist?
Your time is up. Mr. Collins, please answer the question.
It's very easy. We have to grow our way to prosperity. I know how to create jobs. It's what I've spent 30 years doing. We have to lower the marginal tax rate on business so that they have more money to invest, not increase it like my opponent is suggesting we have to do. So, in saying that we're going to lower the tax rates, we're also going to reduce the deductions for higher income earners so they still pay 37% of the taxes in this country, which is what the top 1% do. Mrs. Hochul has never created a job. She's never signed the front of a paycheck. She's never gone without a paycheck so the employees and vendors can be paid. And for the period of time, she took 2 government paychecks, one from the town of Hamburg, one as the appointed deputy county clerk. She and her husband today make almost $350,000 a year working for the government. I am the small business creator. I know what it's like to create jobs in this district. These are hardworking men and women in this district that have their jobs thanks to my investment in taking a risk in growing companies. And with risk comes reward, and businesses need to have a fair tax rate like it is around the world. We have to grow our way to prosperity. We cannot tax and spend our way to prosperity, as Mr. Obama and Mrs. Hochul would suggest.
Thank you so much, Mr. Collins. This brings us now to our closing remarks. Each candidate will have 1 minute. Congresswoman Hochul, we'll start with you.
Thank you for hosting this forum, and Chris for participating tonight. Right now, all over America, parents are tucking their kids into bed. Farmers are ending the long day anticipating an early start tomorrow. Small business owners are closing the books. Seniors are looking at pictures of their grandkids. What do they all have in common? Each one of them wants their families to live the American dream and to be safe and secure. They've got to know that they've got a fighter on their side, someone who cares deeply about this district. I want them to know that when it comes down to who we look out for, I'm looking out for our seniors and our farmers and our small business families. You've heard here tonight very sharp, crystal clear differences between myself and my opponent. Not just who we stand with, but also our approach to the job. Neither party's got all the right answers. We've got to work together. In order to make sure everyone's got the shot at the American dream, we can and we will meet the challenges of this country if we roll up our sleeves and do what's right for this country. I want to say it's been the highest honor to represent this area in Congress, and I'd be so honored to have your vote again. Thank you.
Ms. Hochul. Mr. Collins, you have 1 minute.
Well, this was a lively debate, and clearly, if you want a member of Congress who has always worked in government, a liberal who supports Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi with more taxes, more regulations, and more spending, Mrs. Hochul should be your choice. If, on the other hand, you want a member of Congress who has spent his life in the private sector, creating and saving jobs in this region, someone who believes in smaller government, personal accountability, local decision-making, fiscal discipline, and a government that serves taxpayers and respects future generations, I respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th so I can go to Washington as your member of Congress, working to help restore the promise of the American dream for our children and grandchildren. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great evening, and God bless America.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our debate. We do want to thank both candidates for joining us, Congresswoman Kathy Hochul and challenger Chris Collins. We thank you. Our thanks also to our panelists, WBEN News Radio 930 Susan Rose, Buffalo News political reporter Bob McCarthy, and News 4's Diana Fairbanks. And we thank you for watching. Election Day is November 6th, so remember to get out and vote, and you can watch your vote be counted election night right here on News 4. Good night.